right, hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition. This is an Inside Sports production of Football Talk, in case you didn't know by that fantastic opening there. And, regardless of what the opening says, Chris Lardieri is no longer a special guest. He is actually a member of the team here. We'll be doing this show every single week, all the way through football season, through to 2013, through to the Super Bowl. He's going to be here with me. Chris Lardieri of FootballNation.com. You can also follow him on Twitter at Chris L Sports. So without further ado, everybody, here is the main man, Chris Lardieri. Chris, what's happening?
Not much, Charles. Thank you for another fantastic introduction. I'm just glad football's here, and I'm more than happy to talk about it every week with you on your great show.
Yeah, and that shows that you're a real football fan, because no matter what happened to your Giants last night, you're still happy that football is here.
Absolutely, and the way I look at it, the way the Giants have had their last two Super Bowl runs, I'd worry if it was December. Hopefully they'll knock off all the cobwebs and stop reading all the great headlines about themselves and realize the NFC East is going to be a dogfight this year.
Absolutely, but this is going to be we did preview the NFC last week. We're going to preview the AFC this week, and only fitting that we pay tribute to one of the truly iconic owners in sports who just passed away. That's Art Modell, 87 years old, owner of the Cleveland Browns from 1961 to 1995, before he yanked them from the city, took them to Baltimore, where they became the Ravens, owned them from 96 to 2004. So, loved / hated in Cleveland, but, you can't deny the man's place in NFL history, though.
Absolutely not. And like you said, I know he was hated in Cleveland, but if you were